Are you a Salesforce admin who is looking to level up your Pardot skills? If so, you're in luck. Andrea Terrell, CEO of Circonte, has been working with Pardot for years, and she's here now to share her secrets from the trenches. She knows what works and what doesn't work when it comes to setting up Pardot at various organizations. In this podcast, Andrea will be sharing some of her best tips on how you can leverage Pardot painlessly. If you want to learn how to get more out of Pardot for your organization, then listen closely as Andrea shares some fantastic career advice for Salesforce admins who need to learn Pardot. This is one podcast that you won't want to miss. Make sure you subscribe to The Brainiac Show on your favorite podcast streaming service so that you don't miss future episodes.
Welcome to The Brainiac Show, where we talk about all things Salesforce, sharing the coolest features, solutions, and best practices to turn you into a Salesforce rock star. Here's your host, former attorney turned Salesforce consultant and trainer, David Giller.
Andrea Terrell, thank you so much for joining us today. How are you?
I'm great. How are you doing?
I can't complain. So, for folks who are listening to this podcast who know nothing about you, could you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yes. So I'm the CEO and founder of Circonte. I also have a blog called The Spot for Pardot. I've been in the ecosystem for going on 11, 12 years now, and I'm a marketing champion and a Salesforce MVP.
Nice. And where are you based out of?
So I'm currently based out of Atlanta, Georgia, but have lived in Nebraska and Wisconsin both for about a decade. So those are kind of my two other homes away from home.
Tell us a little bit about how you got started in the Salesforce ecosystem.
So, like a lot of other folks in this ecosystem, I totally fell into it. In the first job that I was in, like right out of college, the Salesforce org that I walked into was a total mess. One rogue salesperson had implemented it, and everybody was an admin. My role was on the marketing team, but the VP of sales came to me and said, "Okay, we have this thing called Salesforce. You probably haven't heard of it, but if you can figure out how to use it, we'll send you to Dreamforce. This is how I want to build." He got out a whiteboard and sure what he was envisioning. And I didn't know what I was saying yes to, but said sign me up and have never looked back.
Nice. So, what kind of background did you have? Database architecture background, marketing automation background, project management, or business analyst background? Did you have any of that kind of background at all to help you unexpectedly dive into this career?
So almost zero. I majored in political science and Spanish literature in college. There's not a lot of parallels with that. And one of the internships that I did in college, it was on a university recruiting team. And I helped them build an access database for the student resumes that they were collecting at career fairs. So self-taught with access and starting to think about the database structure. So that was actually a really surprisingly useful foundation to start to think about Salesforce and put some of the pieces together. But it was 100% Googling, talking to people in the community, just like very like, all right, this is the problem that's right in front of my nose that I need to solve, and taking one thing at a time kind of thing.
What I find remarkable about it is that I think for folks who are in the Salesforce ecosystem for 10 plus years, I believe that most of them were accidental admins. I believe that 10 plus years ago, very few people proactively decided, you know what, I want to pursue a career in Salesforce and proactively sought out, where do I learn Salesforce? I think most of us who became admins 10 plus years ago fall into that category of accidental admins where it just lands on our lap one day and we're like, what the heck is Salesforce? Is that one word or two? And is it only for sales? And we knew nothing about it. And to me, it's just interesting to see the transition, because today, I think it's the exact opposite. I think today, most people are proactively choosing, I want to pursue a career in Salesforce. And they start with Trailhead, and that's the beginning of most journeys today, which is, it's just wild.
It's weird. It's a total paradigm shift because, to your point, there are people who are just saying, I'm going to go out here, I'm going to go out there and get it with regards to Salesforce knowledge and certs, and like making a decision to invest in the ecosystem. I think like some of the folks now who are still falling to the accidental admin category almost feel like a little bit less than because they're like, well, I didn't have any formal training. I didn't like go over any programs. But it's like, oh, guys, you're a great company. We all used to be like this.
Yeah. And I think the lesson at the end of the day is it doesn't really matter where you're starting in your career path or your background and expertise. I often tell people, even if they have zero technology background, so long as they're capable of learning and understanding technology, even if they come to the table with some industry expertise, any industry, doesn't matter. School administrator, working in a nonprofit, working in financial services and healthcare. If they're able to then understand how the technology is used and they're applying their industry expertise from a business process perspective, that's invaluable to any organization. Anyone can learn Salesforce. You really need is an internet connection, Trailhead,
Yeah.
YouTube, some courses to supplement, and yeah, you're good.
Yeah. Could not agree more.
Yeah. Let's pivot a little bit. Let's talk about Pardot because that's where you and your team at Circonte is focusing today, helping organizations to use Pardot and get the most out of the tool to support their marketing automation needs.
So our elevator pitch is that we help marketers be successful with the Salesforce platform. So we're best known for our work with Pardot, but also do quite a bit with Sales Cloud, Service Cloud, Experience Cloud, conversational marketing, ABM platforms, pretty much anything that falls under the marketing tech stack that needs to connect back to Salesforce in some way. Those are things that we support our customers with. And I fell into the Pardot space accidentally too, in all honesty. The company that I was with at the time had HubSpot. I was a HubSpot user group leader briefly, but implemented Pardot and we used it for like the lead gen and nurturing part of our funnel and kept HubSpot for CMS like the front end of the process. But yeah, so started at Circonti to focus on helping primarily Pardot customers take their marketing programs to the next level. It saw that it was an underserved slice of the ecosystem that while it's very similar to Salesforce, is now on the core Salesforce platform. There's still just a tribal knowledge and some marketing centric things that those Pardot admins need support with. And so Circade is aiming to fill that gap.
Which is fantastic because I can tell you, focusing primarily on consulting within the Salesforce space in general, we also help our clients to be successful not only on the Salesforce platform, but also on Pardot. There is a tremendous gap of knowledge, of expertise, of learning resources. Very often, I find that many of my clients, particularly in the last year or so during the pandemic, are coming to me out of the blue. Even clients that have the most frugal budgets ever will come to me and, total surprise, out of the blue, they're like, "Oh, yeah, and by the way, we got Pardot. Can you turn it on for us?" Wait, what? You are too cheap to do, like, to buy another license of anything, and all of a sudden you got Pardot? Like, okay, fine, I'm not even gonna go there. But I start asking, what is it that you would like to do with Pardot? And very often they have no clue. B, they basically tell me that they've tried doing some research and learning about Pardot. And yes, there is some content on Trailhead, absolutely, but they're struggling to find resources to help getting trained in Pardot. And that happens to be a gap that you also fill as it relates to training. Can you elaborate a little bit about that, about the Pardot training that you offer?
Yes. So we offer three Pardot group training courses. One called Pardot Bootcamp. That's soup to nuts admin skills. Code School for Pardot admins, which is like HTML and CSS basics for emails and landing pages. And then Salesforce Basics for Pardot admins, which is basically Salesforce 101 with a marketing lens applied to it. But the biggest training event of the year that we're doing is our annual Pardot conference. So October 27th through 29th, we're doing 3 days of, I think we're up to 65 sessions or so, but jam packed with some intermediate, advanced Pardot type of content that help Pardot customers skill up.
Amazing. I'm looking forward to it myself.
And David, to touch on what you mentioned about companies buying Pardot and not necessarily knowing what to do with it, I see that all the time too. And I think there's this recurring phenomenon in the marketing automation space where like one executive signs the contract for Pardot or another marketing automation tool and then expects it to be a silver bullet that now all of a sudden leads are flowing in the door. Everything's automatically nurtured. It's perfect. Like marketing out ROI is clear, like heaven's open kind of thing. But really, as I'm sure you are well aware, there are no silver bullets just about anywhere. And so it takes a lot of hard work and structured thinking about how products should be used for that organization for it to be successful. And that's really the area that we aim to help marketers promote.
I couldn't agree more. If you could give listeners a high level overview of here's the framework of what needs to be filled in once you have Pardot, what would that framework look like?
In terms of discovery, we want to understand the customer's business, how their sales and marketing programs would operate if technology was totally out of the question. So talk to them about where do you generate leads? How many leads are you generating a month? When you get some kind of indication of interest, who on your team follows up with them? How do you think about territories? How's your sales team structured? How's your sales team paid? Because how people are incentivized is important to know what they're going to pay attention to. And then starting to fill in the gaps of, okay, you are getting leads from these five sources. Let's talk about like how we can speed the process of getting them to raise their hand and say if they're interested. So what content do you have? Are there things that you want people on the stage to know? If you don't have any content, like what sort of things can we create to help bring people to the next stage? And it can feel really daunting if the answers to all of those questions is, I don't know, or I don't have that, or oh, we've never thought about that. But those are the exact kind of things that you need to think through to be successful with marketing automation. And there aren't really any shortcuts around it. So the most successful companies are the ones that either buckle in and get ready to take their team on that ride or can partner with somebody who's willing to help them build that content, stay accountable to the process and build those things out. Once you get through the basics of the process and you have the foundation established, that's when we can start doing cool things like advanced personalization or advanced integrations or the shiny bells and whistles types of things in the screen at Dreamforce type of marketing. But that foundation is really important. Get in place before you try to go too far down that road.
So let me ask you this. What advice would you have for a Salesforce admin who is new to Pardot? So like before we were talking about from an organizational perspective, the things that they need to have in place to actually start using Pardot. Now let's talk about the individual of that in-house Salesforce admin. And they've certainly seen demos of Pardot at different Salesforce events or on YouTube, etc. The CEO says, guess what? Just signed the contract. We now have Pardot. And they're like, oh my God, I have no idea. The first thing they do is they log on to Trailhead to start doing some trails to learn a little bit. What advice would you have for that Salesforce admin who's unfamiliar with Pardot and is suddenly finding themselves in this situation where they need to get up to speed on Pardot quickly because it's their responsibility at work?
Yeah, I think the two things I would say that Salesforce admin should keep in mind. One is that Pardot has its own quirks and idiosyncrasies that are like unique to Pardot. So I think every part of Salesforce has its own secret rule, the things that you just have to pick up through experience. So be curious, start exploring things, test things, and just see how they operate. And then the other one would be to partner really closely with your marketing team and get them to learn Pardot inside and out too. I think sometimes there can be a ton of war between IT and marketing where either IT is trying to take the technical lift off of marketing's plate, or marketing sometimes doesn't want to learn like the technical side. But it really works best if marketing and IT are true partners where marketing's embracing the technology. They're leveraging IT to work with or their Salesforce admin to talk about like process integration with the Salesforce side of the house, but not like abdicating responsibility for their own tech stack. That's a lot for a sales representative to have to take on without like true business partners there.
How would you describe the differentiation between Pardot and Marketing Cloud?
So the line that you'll hear a lot about the distinction between Pardot and Marketing Cloud is that Pardot is B2B and Marketing Cloud is B2C. It's a very like clean definition, but I actually don't totally agree with that. I think Pardot is better suited for any kind of considered purchase. So any kind of sales cycle where somebody's like thinking hard about the product that they're buying and interacting with the salesperson, going through a learning journey to decide what they want to purchase. Pardot is really good for those use cases. So we've had several B2C customers that use Pardot and it's the right fit for them because they have a sales cycle like that. An example would be a yacht dealership. We helped get stood up a Pardot and there are a lot of people that go out and just buy a yacht, like day of on a whim, like a true like consumer product. It's something that like if you're curious about it, you need to learn about it, you need to explore options, you want to talk to a knowledgeable salesperson. So Pardot is great for that. In Salesforce, they could see visibility. Their reps could see, okay, here are all the marketing touch points this person has interacted with. They've spent a lot of time on this web page about this formula product, and just having that level of knowledge was really useful to them in sales. Even things like nonprofits, higher ed, those maybe like I don't even know if B2C is the right label for them, but it's definitely not B2B. But those can be really great use cases for Pardot too, where if you're building a relationship, it takes time. There's an educational process involved. So I would say Pardot's considered purchase. Marketing Cloud is more transactional consumer types of interaction.
Thank you, because I love that differentiation, the definitions that you just gave. That's gold right there. Thank you. What do you think are some of the biggest myths that you have come across about Pardot in particular?
Ooh, that's a good question. Myths about Pardot. We already talked about this the silver bullet thing. Pardot is not a silver bullet. It will never be one. It takes a lot of hard work and energy to get it where you need to go. I guess another myth that is maybe a dying myth is that Pardot is for marketing and Salesforce is for sales and Salesforce admins. The best Pardot and marketing operations folks that we work with know both Pardot and Sales Cloud. And Salesforce's strategy with integrating Pardot seems to be a bit different than a lot of the other companies that they've acquired. Like it seems like a lot of the acquisitions of the Salesforce ecosystem, like it keeps its own, it stays on its own stack, it gets risked in, it gets integrated, but it's not like part of Sales Cloud. Pardot, on the other hand, like all of the new features that they've rolled out in the last 2 years are 100% intertwined with Sales Cloud. Like it's part of Salesforce. Pardot Lightning, you're actually building emails, creating content in Sales Cloud. So the myth of marketing and sales tech being separate, that's one that it is dying and needs to die faster because you need to know both to be effective.
Yes, I agree. And also the progress that Salesforce has made on integrating, even just from a user interface perspective, let alone transactionally and automation between the two systems, but just from a user interface perspective of being in Salesforce Lightning and doing everything that you can otherwise, or that used to be done on through a separate browser window, just like
Yeah.
into Pardot, that's a big conceptual shift where nope, it's all under the same umbrella. It's just part
Yeah.
of Salesforce.
Yep.
I agree. Awesome. Can you speak to some really impressive use cases on how some organizations are using Pardot? And it could be something that's not necessarily rocket science, but they're doing it like really well of managing their marketing slash sales processes within Pardot.
One of my favorite campaigns that we've ever built for a customer is for Serious Insight. Great app exchange company. They're great. And their marketing team has been amazing to work with. But we're actually in the process of redesigning some of this for them right now. But we built a program to them in Pardot that looked at how people were actually using Serious Insight and changed the content that we were sending to users based on what features they were actually using already.
Yeah.
So they used Amplitude at the time. I believe they've switched products, but they were sending data to Salesforce of like how many emails people had logged, how many meetings people booked, like each of their core features, like how many times their users had used those. And so our engagement studio program was this massive like branching logic of, okay, have they used basic feature number one? If yes, we're going to not talk to them about that. We're going to jump them forward in the journey. If no, we're going to send them down this educational path and keep sending them videos, tips and tricks, other things to help them getting to use like the basic functionality before we start talking to them about things that are slightly more advanced or nuanced of the platform. That was one of my favorite programs we've ever built because it was very like choose your own adventure for prospects and people who
Right.
weren't hearing about things that they already knew about. It was completely tailored to them.
And it's also brilliant because so often, I think as people, we're just, everyone is trying to chase the new shiny thing. But with the type of marketing strategy that you just described, there could be core features that have always been there for these users, but by seeing the metrics of these users have not leveraged certain out of the box features that are already there and they just don't know about it, that's a huge A, marketing opportunity. B, of course, those features could be simply irrelevant for that user. So, okay, it could be a small percentage of the audience. It's just not relevant for them to use those features. Okay, fine. But for, I would think most people, they might not even realize that the feature is there. And then they get caught up in that shiny object syndrome where they see a demo of another tool, a different product, where they happen to be highlighting that shiny feature, which happens to be a native feature that's already available in Cirrus Insight.
Yeah.
Let's teach them and show them that there's other functionality that you are not using without necessarily calling out that, by the way, Big Brother, we happen to be watching to what extent of which features of our tool you're
Yeah.
using and not using. Then educating the users, which also can help retain their existing customer base of licenses that get renewed, let alone to get more embedded within the day-to-day use case of how their current customers are utilizing the tool. So I love it. That's fantastic.
Another kind of interesting use case that we're getting more and more requests for are leveraging Pardot with communities or with like e-commerce portals. So the lines of what is marketing and what's not marketing have always been a little bit hazy, but with COVID and kind of the push for improving digital experiences, I think marketing is starting to get its tentacles into online shopping experiences. Yeah, even like customer support sites and things that are powered by communities. So we've helped with some interesting campaigns recently around like adoption of B2B commerce or even just putting Pardot tracking in emails that Salesforce is sending out and emails that are going out through other systems so that sales has visibility into here's how my customers are engaging with this stuff and maybe how should think differently.
That's fantastic. And I find it remarkable when organizations are using a product, could be Pardot, could be Salesforce, they're unaware of how some native out of the box functionality can help dramatically transform the way that they operate. And you're 100% even as it relates to using community cloud, using e-commerce, whether we're talking about tracking similar to the use case for Cirrus Insight, tracking of logins, tracking of the type of content that they are consuming, tracking of the transactions that they've made. Oh, if you were interested in this, you might also be interested in the following. Maybe it's an update to the product, a related service associated to the content that you consumed in the past, which is great. And it's also thinking holistically. It's more than just the, oh yeah, once a month we want to send off a newsletter to everyone in the database.
Yes.
So let's shift topics a little bit. You have a job board for Pardot related job openings. Tell us a little bit about
Yeah.
that.
So going back to the first thing that we touched on, which was like accidental admins and folks volume the Salesforce ecosystem. I think we're still seeing that a little bit with Pardot where there's not a lot of marketers who set out to be like, okay, I'm going to be a marketing technologist or Pardot admin. There's just, it's one of the hats that's getting put on their plates. The market for Pardot talent right now is super hot. So we're aiming to fill some of the need there by aggregating Pardot jobs from our clients, from anybody in the ecosystem that wants to post a job, and we're putting it all in one spot. So the URL is jobs.thespotforpardot.com. So it's a subdomain of our main blog site. But my team is continually refreshing the opportunities there. Employers can create profiles right now to start posting jobs and getting analytics on what they're posting. And we're very close to launching some new functionality for job seekers to help with that as well.
Love it. Anything that helps the Pardot community is awesome. It's a big win for sure.
Yeah.
So let's shift a little bit and talk about, we talked a lot about Pardot and about Salesforce, but since you've started your own consulting business, I think that's a really big topic that In particular, I would say over the last 2 years, and especially with the pandemic, and people are reevaluating where they live and their career choices and where they work. And do I want to work remotely? Do I want to work from home? People are reevaluating everything. And so many people have been reaching out to me with questions about starting a consultancy. And since you've done this, let's talk a little bit about how did you get started as a consultant?
Yeah. So in my career, I worked client side. I worked for a digital marketing agency, worked for a Salesforce consultant. And then I was thinking about going out on my own, kind of starting a solopreneur consultancy kind of thing. And the stars aligned on timing. And I thought I got a really large contract assignment for 3 months that was basically 40 hours a week, but had an official end date. And so I told myself, okay, this is it. I'm going to take this contract. I'm going to go start seeing if there's other work I could find in the ecosystem, see if I could do this solo career thing. Like 3 months is my deadline. If I am able to get more clients, I'll keep doing it. If not, I'll just go look for a full-time job somewhere else. And I was shocked by just how much need there is in the ecosystem. And if you look hard enough, kind of poke around the success community, there are a lot of people that need help. By the time that 3 month contract had finished, I had three more customers that I all through the success community. And that's how Socrate was born. But yeah, so our team's been, I started the business in November of 2017, coming up on 4 years here, but
Mm.
we've been virtual since day one. And that was out of necessity and not some foresight with the pandemic. I just hired Pardot talent wherever I could find them. And then that talent referred their friends and people in their network. And so we sort of organically grew as this virtual company. But for anybody who's thinking about making the leap and starting a business, either as a team of one or with a mission to grow a company, grow a bigger team in the ecosystem, my biggest advice would be just do it. You learn a lot by doing and putting yourself out there and not knowing what's going to happen next. And if it doesn't work out, job market super hot. You're not going to have a hard time finding a new spot. So
Yeah.
make the leap would be my advice.
Absolutely. I agree. And by the way, how did you come up with the name Circante for the business?
So have you heard the origin story of the Pardot name?
I think I did, but I don't recall whatsoever. I'll blame it on being in the 50 plus crowd.
Yeah. So the way the Pardot name came about was the two founders, Adam Blitzer, David Cummings, sat down with dictionary.com and put the word marketing and sales in until they found a domain that was $8 and that they could pronounce. So Pardot literally just means marketing in Latvian.
Oh,
In random language, there was no connection to Latvia at the time, just sounded nice and had a free URL. So I went through a similar Google Translate exercise with Contact, but the word that I used was seeking because I feel like Salesforce does such a great job of painting the vision of what technology can do for a business. And then the business owners buy that technology and they're sitting in a spot where they're like, all right,
yeah.
here's where I am. Here's the silver screen Dreamforce. There's a long way from point A to point B. So we're seeking a path to get there. And so Contact is seeking in Esperanto. And I copied Pardot's naming protocol.
I love it. It's freaking brilliant.
He came over and said,
Oh, it's unique. It's not that many syllables. It was available. So good for you.
I get a lot of questions on if it's Spanish. It's not Spanish, Esperanto.
It works.
It's
Great. So when starting a new consulting business, let's take folks in our audience who are listening and they're inspired to start their own business. They find a name where the domain is available and it works for them. And now, okay, how do I get started? You mentioned before how you happened to get lucky where your first client, essentially, before you even truly decided to be in the consulting business, your first client landed on your lap. What are your recommendations on how someone should go about getting clients for a new consulting business? Because many people feel that the Salesforce ecosystem is so large that I'm competing against so much noise. I'm competing against Trailhead. I'm competing against YouTube. I'm competing against Deloitte and IBM and Accenture. And I can keep going on and on about all of the consulting firms. How do I get clients as a consulting business?
yeah, I would say so getting really clear on who you're talking to. So picking a niche and a sliver of the ecosystem that you want to target. That can be like a tiny sliver or a larger sliver, depending on how you want to approach it and what the competition looks like. But there is a sliver of the universe that is underserved, can guarantee it. So getting clear, like, who am I talking to? What's the problem that I'm solving? What keeps them up at night? And how can I just be helpful and make their lives easier? I think that's a great frame of mind to walk into things with. And then looking at like what value can you add and what can you share that helps even before they sign their first check. All of my first customers, I either found through answering questions on the success community or through the Spot for Pardot blog. And when I started posting blogs about Pardot, I honestly was just doing it for me, like writing about things that I was interested in or frustrated by or scenarios that were coming up with clients. It was more of like a cathartic, like I'm putting my thoughts on paper exercise than anything else. But people found it. And I was thinking, there's dozens of blogs in the Salesforce ecosystem. No one's even going to find this. No one's going to read it. But no matter how you define their segment, there are people like you that are looking for more than what they have today. So I think there's plenty of room for new content creators in the world of Salesforce,
Yeah.
especially ones who have a specific focus.
That is great advice. Thank you. What do you think are some of the biggest misconceptions that people have about starting a consulting business?
One of the things that I did exhaustively when I first started Circate was Googled like how to start a business, like most important things when you're starting a business, or I think I've got like a how to start a business for dummies book kind of thing that walked you through
They-
what you need to know about starting a business. That was not helpful at all in retrospect. I would say that 90% of people who write blogs on how to start a business have never actually started a business. So you're taking advice from like the armchair pundits of the internet. But a lot of the things that I thought in the beginning that would be like so important, like having a business plan, hiring a lawyer, getting our contracts, like none of that stuff actually mattered until several years into it. I was really lucky that like the first four lawyers that I called all told me, listen, you don't really need me. Don't spend your money on me. Just sign a few customers, do some work. And once you start generating revenue, let's have another conversation about it. It took me like 3 times of hearing that to, yeah, okay, maybe they're telling me the truth. Maybe the internet's wrong. I think this is also an analogy to being a Salesforce admin. The best learning from my perspective is doing. So like finding a customer to try something with and learning from what the feedback that you're getting and the things that you're putting out there goes a lot longer than focusing on the stuff behind a computer where you're just thinking about structure and documentation and financial and legal stuff. I put that second and get out there and do it as number one on the list.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. I think one of the biggest misconceptions that I see is when people pursue, and this is not exclusive to a Salesforce focused consulting business, but when someone decides that they're going to open a business, it doesn't matter if it's party planning, a dental practice, anything, they imagine themselves doing that thing that they enjoy doing and they're really good at, and not only doing it for most clients, where that is the primary focus of what they're doing 9 to 5, but very often the person starting the business does not realize that starting a business and running a business involves so many other skills that have absolutely nothing to do with the party planning, the running of a dental practice, or running of a Salesforce consulting business. It's about the marketing and the sales and the invoicing and the tax work and the paper work and tracking the payments that have been received or not received from the invoices that have been sent. So a lot of times what I find is that people get shocked, just totally shocked and overwhelmed by all of those logistics, to which I often say, yes, a lot of it can be very time consuming, but at the same time, there are resources available to either learn how to do those things, and you just have to come to the realization that a lot of your time is going to have to be dedicated to the behind the scenes logistics of running the business. Or if you have enough paying clients, you pay other people to take care of those things to the best of their ability for you so that you can spend your time doing the party planning, the dental work, the Salesforce
Yeah.
consulting.
Yeah. And I think like the best way to learn those things as they come, just tackle it like as they come just trust in your ability to figure it out because you will. Because to your point, like there are resources to teach you how to do it. There are people you could hire to do it. So I see a lot of would-be entrepreneurs like worrying about some of that stuff like way before they need to worry about it. Like my perspective is like get a client and then let's like worry about like the invoicing and billing because that stuff obviously needs to be taken care of. You have to learn how to do that. You can't not engage in that, but you can get there.
100%. So in the end, the message is be agile about it. Go to market with your minimally viable product. And
Yes.
it's okay if you're initially doing time tracking on an Excel spreadsheet or a Google Sheet because you can't even afford Excel. And if
But-
you're
but
generating your first invoice very manually using Google Docs and nothing is being mail merged whatsoever, and you're receiving payment by a paper check because you have no mechanism of getting digital payments, I agree with you 100%. It's totally cool to start with that. Don't worry about all of the other things until they become a problem. And don't be shocked or dismayed when you suddenly have to focus on those things. Those are good problems to have.
I think that we've covered a lot of ground here. This has been a great conversation.
I agree. Andrea, thank you so much for joining us today and for sharing your insight and your wisdom, both on the Salesforce platform as well as the Pardot platform, and sharing your advice on starting up and running a consulting business in the Salesforce space. Where can people find you? How can people connect with you?
So I'm pretty active on Twitter, just at Andrea Terrell. The spot for Pardot.com is our, I say our because it used to be my blog, but now it's the Circante team's blog. So lots of great content and information being shared there. And then Partdreaming.com. That's the best place to engage with other current professionals at the end of this month.
Fantastic. And I will be putting the links to everything you mentioned in the show notes for this podcast. Andrea, thanks again for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you. Have a good one.
Thank you for listening to this episode of The Brainiate Show. Make sure to subscribe on Spotify, Audible, or Apple Podcasts so that you don't miss any future episodes. Don't forget to check out the show notes where you'll find links to any resources mentioned. If there's a topic you would like to hear about on an upcoming episode, drop me a note on Twitter or LinkedIn. I'd love to hear from you. Thanks again and have an awesome day.